All right, before we look closely at the iCafe VPP Manager plugin, we need to first understand the Apple VPP program, what its limitations are, and exactly what problems we're attempting to solve by using this program. To begin, we need to kind of understand the iTunes ownership model. Apple calls it a layered ownership model with personal, group, and volume purchase program ownership model. So let's look at each one and kind of get a feel for what we're talking about here. The first one, the personal ownership model, is what we're all familiar with. It's what you use on a personal device. You create a personal iTunes account. You can purchase apps on it. You could sync multiple personal devices to that single iTunes account. The problem is that you cannot use a personal ownership model on a classroom set of iPads without being outside of Apple's terms of use. The group ownership model is one in which you would create a single iTunes account, you would not link it to a credit card, and you would sign in a classroom set of iPads, a cart of iPads to this single account. Maybe they're managed off of a cart with a MacBook, or you simply manage them by hand. But it would allow you to install free apps under a single account on an entire set of iPads. But you can't purchase apps in this model. If you attempt to purchase an app using a group ownership model, it's only going to let you pay for the app one time. And you're not allowed to install one copy of an app on 30 different devices owned by, say, a school district or a corporation. To solve that, Apple created the volume purchase program. It's their answer to enterprise deployments. It allows you to purchase apps tax-free if you're a school district, volume discounts in groups of 20 or more. So it sounds perfect. The problem is it's incredibly difficult to manage, and it's full of holes. But it's all we have, so we have to use it. The iCafe VPP Manager program attempts to add a layer of control on top of the VPP program to plug some of those holes. So here's what we like about the volume purchase program. It lets school districts and businesses attempt to comply. Before the volume purchase program existed, school districts and companies were begging for a way to pay for multiple copies of an app. I want to buy 50 copies of Keynote, but there's no mechanism for me to do that. As soon as I try to buy a second copy, iTunes tells me I already own it and wants me to download it again for free. So the VPP program lets me actually pay for the 50 copies that I'm going to deploy. For schools, it's tax-free. I get the volume discount. What I don't like is that the purchases are still treated as consumable. Now, Apple will tell you that enterprise, school districts, or companies can maintain ownership of the apps that they purchase if the code that you purchase is redeemed under an enterprise iTunes account. And that sounds great, but in practice, it's very difficult to manage. So it's really been designed with Apple encouraging you to give the codes away and to allow your end users to redeem them under a personal iTunes account. And for a company, that might be fine. But for school districts, we really run into an issue when we purchase apps for staff members. And the issue is this. If I give a staff member a code and they redeem it under their personal iTunes account, I've now given them a fungible asset, something of value. I either need to report that as additional income, pay payroll taxes on it, well, that's a logistical nightmare, or it truly was a gift of taxpayer dollars, which is also not legal. What we need to do is to maintain ownership, which Apple says we can do if we follow some guidelines. They just don't make it easy. The iCafe VPP management program allows you a vehicle for maintaining that ownership. We also don't like that the purchases are not linked to an account when you purchase the app. You're actually not buying an app in the VPP program. You're buying a code that can be redeemed for an app. And it's when that code is redeemed that ownership takes place. Whatever iTunes account is signed in when the code is redeemed is the iTunes account that owns that particular license. I also don't like that it wasn't purpose-built. The redemption code mechanism existed long before VPP was thought of. The redemption code mechanism was Apple's gift to app developers. Whenever you released a new app or app updates, you received a certain number, I think it was 20, redemption codes that you could give away to end users. Apple simply built the VPP program on top of that redemption code model, which is why we struggle with it so much. What we really want in enterprise management is we want to be able to manage our content and we want to be able to manage our hardware, the actual devices. Well, Apple's answer to that is MDM platforms, mobile device management. There's a lot of companies that have MDM platforms. Meraki is a free utility, all the way up to extremely expensive platforms. In the end, they're all almost identical. Apple only allows companies to control certain aspects of iOS. And every MDM platform controls everything that Apple will let them control. So functionally, they're all almost identical. Now, they might present themselves slightly differently visually, but they all control the same things in the end. So it sounds good. I get device management, sort of, and I get content management, my apps, sort of. It's not quite there yet. It's getting better in every single release of iOS. But it's really the device management that's getting better. The content management is still tied to the VPP program, which hasn't improved. So let's look at the VPP program in a popular mobile device platform. Here's a screenshot from Casper, which is Jamf's popular MDM platform. And what Casper lets you do is you still purchase your codes on the Apple site. You don't purchase codes within the MDM. You go to the Apple site, you purchase your codes, you create your program facilitator accounts, you do all those things on the Apple site, and then you log into Casper and you upload your codes. And then you can scope those codes to groups of devices or individual devices. And then on a particular device, in the self-service portal, all the apps that have been purchased for that device show up. This allows the quote owner of the device to click through here and install the apps. There's also a push notification model where you can actually push a notification to a device that an app has been purchased for them. It sounds fantastic. Here's the problem. As soon as they click on an app, whether from the self-service portal or through the push notification service, it pops up and asks for an Apple ID and password to redeem the code under. Obviously, most users are going to enter their personal iTunes account, at which point they own the app. So when we used Casper, we thought we were very clever, and we rewrote the core of Casper to display a district-owned iTunes account right to the side of the box asking them for a username and password. Our end users, it was fantastic. They saw that, and they, instead of using their personal account, they used the district account, and we maintained ownership. And we operated under this model for more than a year. It worked fantastically well until iOS 5 shipped. And iOS 5 broke everything for us, because now when they clicked on an app to install, this is what they saw. The current signed in iTunes account username was hard-coded. They couldn't change that. I'm sure Apple thought they were saving people from typing an extra field, but for us, it broke our deployment model. There was no mechanism for them to sign out of this account and to sign into another account. That's when we decided to quit relying on an MDM platform and quit relying on iOS, because we couldn't control it. It could change at any time. So we decided to build our own platform for deploying our VPP apps. What we wanted to do, it was to link this process with other district processes. For us, we had a technology website already that our staff was very familiar with. It's built on the popular WordPress platform, so it seemed appropriate that we simply build a WordPress plugin that could live within our existing iCafe site. Users were used to it. We decided we wanted to manage the programs, not the devices. And by programs, I don't mean the apps being purchased. I mean the program making the purchase. Is it special ed? Is it a particular high school science department? Is it a district initiative? What program is making the purchase? I also needed to enable a small number of people to manage the thousands of apps. Like most districts, we are understaffed in the support areas. So I needed my small staff of 10 employees to be able to support 3,000 staff members who might be purchasing apps. And it was critical that we maintain ownership of our app purchases, both from a legal and accounting standpoint as well as an economical standpoint. We could not afford to give away. We serve 30,000 students. We could not afford to repurchase thousands of dollars of apps every year. So let's look at the VPP program from Apple's perspective. This is what they've created for us. It's broken up into 3 layers. Layer 1 is the most critical, the program manager. This is a very special account. You have to apply to have this account created. They're going to want to certify that you're an education institution or a business institution. It takes a few weeks to have this account created. And the program manager cannot make app purchases, cannot redeem volume purchase vouchers. All the program manager can do is to create the middle layer, the program facilitator accounts. Now, the program facilitator accounts are very special Apple IDs. These Apple IDs can be used to redeem vouchers, the volume purchase vouchers, which is, it's like an iTunes gift card, but it's a volume purchase card. And they can make app purchases in the Apple Education Portal. They cannot, these program facilitator iTunes account cannot be used in the traditional iTunes store. These are the accounts that we need to belong to the district. And then finally, there's the end users, the actual people who are redeeming the codes. Now, the end user could be a program facilitator, which is kind of what we needed to have happen. I knew that anyone with a budget could purchase a volume voucher card. So I have potentially 1,500 people buying volume vouchers. They each want their own program facilitator account. We could not create a single district program facilitator account or even a campus-based program facilitator account, because when you redeem a voucher under a program facilitator account, it gets added to the total dollars available to that account. So we would quickly lose track if there are 5 $100 vouchers that have been redeemed. Well, then there's 500 in that account, even if it was 5 different purchasing programs. So for me, each purchasing program needed its own program facilitator account. But I didn't want 1,000 different end users actually logging into the volume purchase portal, redeeming vouchers and making app purchases, I'd lose track very quickly of what transactions were occurring and if those apps were being redeemed under the correct account. So what the iCafe Volume Purchase Program Manager does is to create a new layer, a layer that doesn't natively exist. We call it Program Administrators. Program Administrators are special users within our enterprise, within our district, that manage multiple program facilitator accounts. One program manager might manage 300 or 400 program facilitator accounts. But because the plugin takes care of all the workflow and automates much of the process, it's very easy for that person to manage 300 different program facilitator accounts because they're not doing it manually. The iCafe VPP program management utility is taking care of all of that automated business process workflow for them. In the next videos, you'll actually get to see how the program works, how the plugin works. But in order to understand how the plugin works, you needed to understand our approach to the Apple VPP process. Thank you for your time. I hope you found this useful.